It's been 20 years since Garrett Bardsley disappeared in the Cuberant Basin. And I've been up there several times to film videos and talk about his case. What I've done here is I've pulled all of my videos from the Cuberant Basin off of YouTube and edited them into one long video, one long 3.5 hour, I think, video. I normally don't do gigantic long videos like that. I do longer videos, but I've never done one this long. And the reason why I'm doing it is because it's the 20th anniversary. I've been to the Cuberant Basin numerous times, and going back again this year would basically be redundant. So I thought, you know, the point of my videos about Garrett Bardsley and the Cuberant Basin is to keep him in memory and not forget that a 12-year-old boy disappeared up there. Right now I'm hiking the Lofty Lake trail, and it's a loop, and it ends at the same trailhead where Garrett Bardsley started his final scout camp trip. I've edited out some content from these videos that, you know, sometimes when you go back through something, you're like, why did I leave that in there? And then there were things that, frankly, pissed a lot of people off. So I took those things out. I don't want this video to be controversial. I want it to focus on what may or may not have happened to him in a general way and keeping his memory alive. He wasn't my kid, but I had a 12-year-old when Garrett disappeared. He would be 32 years old now, probably have a wife and kids and a career and be up here with his own kids, who knows. So my heart goes out to the family. This is my tribute, my 3 trips that I took to the Cuberant Basin specifically to talk about Garrett Bardsley. Hope you enjoy it. I felt like on the 20th anniversary I just needed to do something significant. So the individual videos are no longer on my channel. It's all in one video right here. Rest in peace, Garrett Bardsley. I still hope one day we'll find out what happened. But I'm going to finally lay this issue to rest with this series of videos you're about to watch. So thanks for joining me, guys. I got to finish this loop before the storms roll in. Do yourselves a favor. Get off the couch, get outside in nature, and have an adventure. And if you can't get off the couch for whatever reason, die, mosquito, come along with me. I could use the company. And did I mention, the views are spectacular. Welcome back. Utah Steve here. Today we are back in the Uinta Mountains. I told you I was going to hit them hard this year. This is a little different kind of a trip, a very special and important one, to me anyway. I'll get to that in a minute. We are at the Pass Lake Trailhead, and up in these hills, about 3.5 miles in, is a place called the Cuberant Basin. Cuberant is a Ute word that means long, and there's a lake up here called the Cuberant Lake. In other words, the long lake. It's a very long lake. There are 4 or 5 or something like that Cuberant lakes up here, but the main lake is the biggest and the longest, and that is actual Cuberant Lake. The other ones are like number 2, number 3, number 4, and I've looked for maps and I cannot see which ones are numbered which. But that's okay. Our destination is ultimately the Cuberant Lake itself, If I find a good spot below it, we'll camp there and just hike up to the main lake. So it's 3.5 miles. Like I said, it's an out and back trail, so 7 miles roughly, 6.5, 7 miles, something like that. And today is Independence Day here in the United States. So happy Independence Day, my fellow Americans. So I'm celebrating my freedom by getting out into the Uinta Mountains. This is a solo trip. And we're going to talk today about what it made world headlines of right here. It started right here in this parking lot of a missing persons case from a 12-year-old boy named Garrett Bardsley. On August 20th, 2004, Garrett and his dad and a Boy Scout troop were camping in the Cuberant Basin. And Garrett and his dad got up to go fishing at one of the Cuberant lakes. I'm not sure which one. Some sources say the main lake, some say it was a smaller lake. Anyway, they got up before everyone else and they were fishing. And Garrett stepped in the water and got his shoes and socks wet. His dad told him to go back to camp and change. Camp was only 150 to 200 yards away, so 1.5 to 2 football fields, American football fields, long. He started walking back to camp. He started heading the wrong direction. His dad was watching him and said, "Hey, not that way, remember?" And Garrett was like, "Yeah, I know where I'm going." And he was never seen again. A few minutes later, his dad walked back to camp and discovered that Garrett had never arrived at camp. The other scouts were there, the other leaders were there, and said, "Nope, haven't seen him." A search ensued. This was about 8 a.m. By 10:56 a.m., 10:53, right in that neighborhood, they were contacting search and rescue. There's no cell service up here. I don't even know, were there cell phones? Yeah, there were cell phones in 2004. You have to drive down the highway a ways to even get cell service. So they would have had to drive down, make the phone call. 1,000 people searched a 40 square mile area through the Cuberant Basin and didn't find so much as an article of clothing. There was a Nike sock found about less than a mile from where he disappeared, but one of the searchers said it was theirs, that they had stopped to change their wet socks during the search and had left it behind. So it wasn't Garrett's, it turned out. Even though Garrett's grandmother or mother or somebody said that it was his. So that was kind of questionable. Who knows? I've followed this since it happened. In 2004, I was newly widowed and trying to figure my life out, and my life was very confusing and chaotic. And at the time, I had an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old that I was raising by myself. My oldest sons, Ash and Murphy, who are now grown, of course. And Garrett was 12 years old, and he vanished in one of my favorite places in the whole world, the Uinta Mountains. So it's really struck a chord with me. They searched for 9 days. On day 5, it went from being a rescue mission to being a recovery mission. Nothing was ever found. There are several theories. There are, no witnesses to what happened to him. There's more to that story. I guess while the dad was gathering up the fishing gear to head back to camp, he heard someone yell "Dad," and he kind of sort of investigated it and didn't really find anything, so proceeded back to camp and discovered his son was missing. So maybe that was Garrett calling out "Dad." It's hard to say. With that many boys up there and that many scout leaders, anybody could have been calling Dad. But we'll go further into that story when we get up there. Right now, I need to get on the trail. It is 4 p.m., which is about what time I thought I would get up here. My gear's in the back. This is an all-new kind of adventure. I have a new backpack. I have a new to me tent that I'm using for the first time. And this is a new area that I've never been to. This isn't the easiest hike, but it's not horrible. It's probably moderate. So let's get on the trail. Let's get the pack on and get on the trail. And we'll talk more about Garrett Bardsley and what may or may not have happened, and look at the area where he was last seen. This is a pretty rocky trail, and I've been working on this idea of coming up here for 2 years. I started planning it in probably the fall of 2018, and I didn't. I was even going to come up in August, which was the same time, of course, that Garrett disappeared. Instead, life happened, and then last year I didn't get out much at all. Finally, I brushed up on my research about this incident up here and also about this area, and we're finally here. So this trip, my friends, is 2 years in the making for me. From what I understand, the first mile isn't bad. The second mile is kind of a pain, and the third mile is a bitch, to be honest. This basin has some incredible views. Tonight, this is awesome. This is so cool. It's Independence Day. It's a full moon at 12:44 a.m. and it's a lunar eclipse all in one night. And this is where we're spending it. Woohoo! Pretty sweet. Now, the lunar eclipse isn't going to be a really impressive one. They said it will just put a light shadow. The Earth's shadow will just sort of dim the moon, I guess. But there should be plenty of moonlight tonight for sure. Here's some signage. Highway 150. This is the Mirror Lake Highway. That's where that trail will come out. We are heading to Cuberant Lake. Also up here is Camas Lake, another popular hike. Very thick foliage, lots of pine trees, lots of room for a 12-year-old boy to get lost. As you may know, if you've seen any of my videos, I am still raising a 10 and 11-year-old boy. My two oldest boys are grown, and as coincidence would have it, my two youngest boys are roughly the age Garrett was when he disappeared. He was 12, but close. And so this still strikes a chord with me. It's really got me thinking about trail safety with children. Something I need to really go over with my boys. One thing I've noticed already, I've passed several hikers on their way out, and so far my trail going in has been largely downhill. Every one of those hikers looks drained, exhausted, frazzled. So it goes without saying that if your trail is easy on the way in, it's probably going to be tough on the way out, and vice versa. This beautiful meadow. Look at that, it just goes out there forever. Maybe you guys can see why the Uinta Mountains are my favorite place in the whole world. If you think the trail is beautiful, look at that. That is Reed's Peak. That is Bald Mountain. What a view. What a view. That you can't even make this up. Dang. We just came up this, and we have more uphill right here, which is kind of daunting. But the reality is we have to go up and around a mountainside before we go down into the basin. So this was expected. Just not fun. Okay, you guys, this has happened to me only once before in all my history of hiking, backpacking. Maybe twice, but not quite on this scale. I have hiked and hiked and hiked back downhill to this sign that I didn't even notice. Cuberant Lake, that way. You see how the trail is almost not noticeable, but the sign is Camas and Lofty Lakes, that way. That's where I just came from, obviously. So unfortunately, A, I took myself about a mile out of the way. B, it was all uphill. I used a lot of energy. C, I've used a lot of battery on my phone or on my camera. And D, it's dinner time. I should be set up at camp, enjoying myself, relaxing, instead of still standing here by this sign. So there's only one thing I can do, and that's take this trail and go where I was meant to go. What I'm gonna do is hike into the basin, the most decent spot I can find to camp. As soon as I can, I'm gonna set up there. And then what we'll do is worry about the lake, hiking to it later. It's actually what Garrett Bardsley's scout troop did. They camped down lower and hiked up to the lake to fish the next morning when he disappeared between camp and the lake. So that's what I'm gonna do, but not because I'm trying to imitate that experience, just because I can't put my head up sometimes and notice a sign. A lot of times when I'm walking on trail, I'm looking down and I forget to look up and pay attention. And this was a simple act of not paying attention to my surroundings. So let this be a lesson to me mostly, and to anyone else watching. I could let my pride get the best of me, let my ego get the best of me, and not show any of that and just cut it out and make it look like I went this way. But A, it would be dishonest, and B, I want to show what can happen when you go on these trips, especially by yourself like I do. How easy it is to take the wrong trail and get totally confused about where you're going. You could get completely lost even. So we're okay. The sun isn't going to go down for like 2 more hours. It's about 6:30 p.m. I've literally been hiking for 2 hours, and I'm frustrated because an hour of that was completely unnecessary. So let's make up for it now. Let's go into the actual basin. We hiked, see, that is Mount Marcel, and we hiked around that side of it instead of around that side of it into the basin. So yeah, I'm gonna swallow my pride and just tell you what happened, because it could happen to anyone, especially if you've never been there before. That really took a lot out of me to hike that much for no reason. So stupid. The sun's still out at least, right? And make no mistake, still a very beautiful hike. Cutting through this beautiful meadow right at the base, Mount Marcel. This place has a magical way of making you feel very small. Imagine being 12 and lost in this. Well, there's some kind of little lake down there. There's Reed and Baldy. We just came up this, and I think the worst is yet to come. That doesn't look like much right now, my friends. My body is pretty beat up at the moment, and that is steeper than it looks. Okay, we're up significantly higher. We didn't go that far, but we did make it up this that I was so concerned about. Our trail goes like this and like that over that ridge. It's gonna be worth it though, right? There's a pot of gold over there somewhere. I hope. Actually, I hope not, because if there is, I'm not lugging it out of there. That's all I need is one more thing to carry out. I am so looking forward to dinner and a tent and a fire. I don't think there's a question about the fire tonight because I need it psychologically. The comfort of a warm fire after a long hike like this. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, we made it up to where it levels out. Jeez, you guys. I can't even tell you how breathtaking this is live and in person. This is by no means a moderate hike, by the way. This is hard. And anyone who tells you any different is just trying to stroke their ego. Man. Well, here's our trail. Just right up through these trees, and I think we're over the pass. Thank goodness. Welcome to the Cuberant Basin. Here's our trail, and it looks like it goes down, and I can see it all the way down there in that meadow. See that? Right there. That's our trail. So this is the Cuberant Basin. This is where Garrett Bardsley disappeared. And this is where we're going to spend the night. I think we may camp down in that clearing. And Cuberant Lake, the big one, is up in there somewhere, up in those trees. We'll figure that out after we get down there and see if there's a good spot to camp in that meadow. That's probably where they camped. That makes sense. They would hike down, set up camp, and fish later, you know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to think how they would think. And the truth is, I don't know how they would think, I'm guessing. So maybe there are people out there who know this story better than I do as far as locations go. There was plenty of information on the internet. Old news stories and people's articles they've written, podcasts, videos, opinions. We'll get to those. Theories. If anyone out there knows the locations, I'd sure like to know, so comment down below. Because the locations, I could not find. Everyone said, oh, he camped in the Cuberant Basin. He was fishing at a lake. Sometimes he was fishing at Cuberant Lake. He could have been fishing at any of these lakes. My guess is they were camped in that meadow, and up in there where Cuberant Lake is, hiding from us, that's where they were fishing, and he was hiking back to camp in the meadow and disappeared somewhere in there. Somewhere, if I were to guess, if this is in my own theory, it'd be somewhere in those, on that hill somewhere in those trees. But I've never been here before, and I need to get up there before I can really give you my honest opinion, my gut feeling, and you can take it or leave it. Let's work our way down. Okay, we are in the meadow. There's a pond here and some kind of pond over here. My only issue with them camping there now that I'm down here is that I don't necessarily see a campfire ring anywhere. So I'm going to walk a little further down the trail. I can hear water flowing. That's good. We need a water source that's not stagnant. We may camp in these trees if I can find a good spot. Beautiful. I have no doubt that this is coming from Cuberant Lake up there. So I've decided there's Cuberant Lake, the big one in the upper right, and we are pointing towards that little one. We've already passed these couple of ponds, but I guess they're considered Cuberant lakes. There's like 5 of them, but I think the only one that has fish is the big one, so they had to be fishing there. The rest of these are just ponds. So we're going to cross this just right through there, up through here towards another small Cuberant lake. Okay guys, I want to show you this. This is what I'm surrounded by. So those of you armchair sleuths who've said, how could he get lost 150, 200 yards from camp? This is how. I've been just following these rocks, and the reason I even know I'm going a respectable direction is because of this. Come on, focus. See, we are almost at the next lake is there, and beyond that is the big Cuberant Lake, which is where we're gonna go instead of that meadow. Just don't feel good about the meadow. But we have to bushwhack through this, and if he was trying to get back to that meadow at all, there's a chance. I could be totally off on this. He could have easily gotten completely lost in this. This is insane. So we're gonna continue up through this somehow. Okay, according to my little GPS, this is that smaller lake, and I see fish ripples in the water. So what I want to do is find somewhere to camp, fish, and relax here. I think the big lake is up that way. If there's fish in here, then I'd rather just camp here than keep hiking. I'm exhausted. It's 8 p.m. I need to set up a camp. Just another thought. It's very possible that they were fishing here, and he could have easily just slipped and stepped in the water. And his dad sent him back down this trail, back to the meadow to camp. It's about a couple hundred yards from here. This may be the last place Garrett Bardsley was seen alive. I don't know. But the big Cuberant Lake is up in there, and I am not motivated anymore to go up there. I am beat. And these mosquitoes, although they're not biting me, they are pretty aggressive. And if I can get a fire started, the smoke will help clear them out. And I want to get my pole in the water and get dinner going. Look at this crevice. It's quite deep. It would be just the right size for someone to fall down into if they were injured, not be noticed. There's no water down there. I can't even imagine all the nooks and crannies he could have fallen into. So I found a spot back there, a nice clearing. And when I got there, there were a couple of tents and a few people. So I'm not the only one with this bright idea to come up here. But I am the only one by myself. So Mr. Sunshine is disappearing. There's a clear spot right there for a tent right there. It's a little slopey, but it's clear because you can see most of this area is not. And there's a little fire ring right here. Some logs to sit on. Plenty of firewood around. All right, guys, this is camp. It's not beautiful, but it'll do. It'll do. Okay, guys, you're gonna have to forgive me. I've only set this tent up at home once, and then today it's staked out a little screwy, but it's tight and it's strong, it's solid. This is a Kelty tent. It is a gift to me, as usual, from my buddy Joe. See, this was one of his first backpacking tents he no longer had a use for. I actually agreed to take it so that my boys could use it on their backpacking trips. So this is testing grounds for this one. I've never slept in it, I've never used it, and I left the flybacks just so you could see in a little bit. I've got my quilt, my jungle blanket, a pillow, and an inflatable sleep pad in there. And my battery's dying, I gotta change that real quick. Anyway, of course we've got Bob Jr. on the trip with us. He always comes.
He's been so many places. When I'm dead and gone, he's going to be sitting in a china cabinet that I have at home, and everyone will know all the adventures he's been on. Anyway, he's kind of my little mascot. I've got a mess going on right here. There's not too much else left in the pack. Fire pit is over here. This is where dinner will be served. It is 8:30 p.m. I have literally been hiking for 4 hours. It's ridiculous that I got so sidetracked. This is not a 4-hour hike, guys. Anyway, they are starting to land on me, so I'm going to freshen up my bug repellent and worry about the fire and dinner. And in the morning, we'll get up early and we'll go down and fish. You can see behind me the sun is still hitting Mount Marcel. But over here, quite a different story. The sun has gone down and it's going to get dark soon, and these mosquitoes are making me insane. So yeah, the sooner I get smoke going, the better. Okay guys, dinner tonight really doesn't have much to do with the campfire. The campfire is there to get rid of the bugs, and warm me and comfort me. Of course, you guessed it. Dinner is an MRE. Menu number 6, beef taco. So here's the beef taco filling. That's the main entree. Here's our cooking sleeve. Apparently somewhere in here is Santa Fe style rice and beans. Toasted corn nuggets, those are basically corn nuts. I'm not crazy about them. Oh, here goes the big question. Of course, more cheese spread. Bastards. It's never peanut butter. Except they made up for it here. I got some Reese's Pieces, which are kind of warm right now. I've got a cold orange drink, which sounds wonderful. I'll probably have that. Tortillas to go with the taco filling. That's good. It's Santa Fe rice and beans as well. I don't know if I'll eat this whole thing, but I'll definitely put a dent in it. Here's our accessory pack with the usual stuff. A little more bulky. This one includes matches, coffee, cream, sugar, toilet paper, wipes, and gum, and a beverage bag. And that's it. That's everything that's in there. So I'm going to get the main entree started, and then what I'm going to do is get my little blue cup out Mr. Joe Shanks gave me on my last outing and make this orange base drink mix. It sounds really good. Okay, our main course is cooking right here. It's getting nice and hot. This drink beverage calls for 20 ounces. My cup is only 16, but I don't care. That's fine. It'll just be a little strong. This cup's really cool. Everybody knows I like blue. Joe is a gift giver. He is very thoughtful of other people. Oh, it's tang. It's like tang. So I rescued our little friend here just in the nick of time. Look how bendy his legs are. He was a little too close to the fire. It's getting darker by the second, guys. I'm gonna heat up some what water I have left in my filter, and I think I'll be good for the night, and then I'll refill water in the morning. Get this Espit tab going. Have a nice cup of hot cocoa. These are pretty done cooking. Hopefully when I show it to you, you can actually see it. If not, we'll live, right? Ooh, nice and liquidy and warm. Here's what that looks like. There you go. That's pretty good. I hope this isn't chili with beans. It sure looks like it. Bottoms up. No, it's ground beef. No beans, thank goodness. Want some? Normally would bring a headlamp, but I forgot. At least I remembered this. Very comforting to have a powerful flashlight when you're up here by yourself and you have to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. 1,000 lumens is pretty bright. Anyway, we're gonna clean up this mess, drink our cocoa. Fire's pretty much died down. All I needed was enough smoke to get rid of the bugs, and it worked. So that's all we got left are those embers. And then, my friends, we will go to bed, and I will probably look less creepy. It looks like my other eye is like out of socket. And finally, after so many hours without sleep, all week in fact, not much sleep, hopefully I'm gonna get a decent night's sleep now. It's very quiet. I can occasionally hear a dog bark or a kid laugh very far away. We're out here, guys. This is the true backcountry. So we were gonna talk about some of the theories about what happened to Garrett Bardsley. So I got online and I made some notes. I looked it up. And there are many theories, and some of them are really just ridiculously out there. Of course, there are conspiracy theorists. First of all, when I remember seeing it on the news, and my first thought was that he made it back to the road and got abducted. Someone picked him up, saw him walking along the road, the main road that goes through the Uintas, Mirror Lake Highway. However, this was years ago, before I even understood where Cuberant Basin was, how hard it was to get back to the road, how far away it was. There's no way he hiked all the way back to the road when he was hiking 100 yards, 150 yards back to his campsite. There were a lot of people up here camping at the time, so it's not like, you know, nobody saw him. He was never up here. I read one theory where the guy was like, oh, he was never there, the dad did it. And the dad made up the story that they went camping. He was up here with a whole scout troop. Everyone saw him. Everyone interacted with him. That's BS. Another theory, first of all, police ruled out abduction because they could find no evidence that he was abducted. Frankly, they found no evidence of anything. They found nothing, not hair, not bones, not clothing, not blood. It could have been a wild animal, maybe a mountain lion, a bear. Something dragged him off and hid him, stashed him after he was killed. This is graphic, and I don't mean to be, but these are the theories, and it's reality. So maybe that happened. Maybe he just wandered off the wrong direction and got lost, and instead of staying put, he kept walking. But 40 square miles with 1,000 people searching, they would find something, wouldn't they? So here are the out there theories. The Cuberant Basin is notorious for Bigfoot sightings. Now, I'm a skeptic when it comes to Bigfoot. I have my theories. I won't go into that right now. Another theory that was way out there, that a pterosaur flying through the air picked him up and flew off with him. A pterosaur. Yeah, like a pterosaur. Okay, guys, those are extinct. They're not real anymore. They don't exist. So that was absolutely, I could not believe how many people were going with that theory. And then I listened to a podcast and they talked about various theories as well. Was he abducted? Was he, so many things. Well, the problem is it was August 20th. And fall can arrive early up at this altitude. I don't believe he was abducted and taken out of the basin. Now that I've hiked it and seen how treacherous and difficult it can be to hike this, a little while after Garrett disappeared, they continued searching for him, I might add, year after year. The family never got closure. The dad went on to form a foundation to help search for lost kids in the wilderness and that kind of thing. It's been 16 years now. Garrett would be 28 years old. If he was still alive, he would have come out and said, hey, hello, I'm still here. So I don't believe he was abducted and taken somewhere. I was mentioning that fall can come early up here in the Uintas. That night, they said that temperatures dropped to near freezing up here, and that's very possible in August in the Uintas. So they weren't holding out hope that he had survived even the elements. He could have died of exposure. Just recently, a little boy was lost up here. He was 9 years old. He was missing for a few days. His dad lived in Idaho, drove all the way down here when he heard his son was missing and joined the search. And believe it or not, it was his dad who found him. His dad showed up, started searching. He walked out into a meadow, and there was his son, and they just grabbed each other and cried and cried. It was a wonderful reunion, and of all people to find him, his own father found him. Basically, that 9-year-old knew that when he was lost, he needed to stay put. So he did. And I think Garrett, being a Boy Scout, they said he recently took a survival course with the Boy Scouts. He knew a lot of things to do, and yet gone, vanished. If you have your own theories, if you know about his story, maybe you can post them below. I'm not trying to dehumanize Garrett. I'm actually up here because I have 4 boys. 2 of them are that age now. 2 of them were that age back then when this happened, and it just pulls at my heartstrings that this kid was up here alone and scared, and something bad happened to him. And I came up here just to understand. I didn't come up here to solve the mystery or find remains or anything like that. I came up here to understand the terrain, to understand how thick is the vegetation here, what's the area like as far as weather goes, that kind of thing. And I can tell you it's treacherous getting in and out of here. And now that I've experienced it and seen how thick these woods are, boy, he could be anywhere. And I can see how it's possible that 1,000 people searching a 40 square mile area could not find something. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to sum things up with that. I'll leave you to your own thoughts. In the morning, we'll wake up and we'll go fish, just like Garrett and his dad did. And hopefully find our way out of here. I'm going to listen to my audiobook. I'm going to go to sleep. And thanks for listening to me ramble, guys. I appreciate you watching these videos. I know they're long. So that's it. I'm going to shut up and go to sleep. Guys, it's almost 10:30 p.m. I'm exhausted. I will see you in the morning. Good night.
Good morning, guys. It's 7 a.m. I slept a little longer than I had anticipated. First thing I want to do is go fish. I needed to get the bag down so I could put some bug wipes on. Mosquitoes are already active, and I really need to do something about these bugs. Okay, let's get this done. Believe it or not, and I've said it many times, but in case you haven't followed me much, I always take a kiddie pole backpacking because kiddie poles are super lightweight. They cast really well. And if you break them or ruin them, they were only $12, you know? So I've cast right out in that direction. There are some fish jumping right here, but I kind of want to just see what happens out this way first. And if nothing happens, then I'll throw it over here. This is the lake first thing in the morning. This is about the time of day that Garrett and his dad would have been fishing here. Either here or up higher at Cuberant Lake. I'm not sure which. And this is how easy it would have been for him to slip into the water. Maybe standing on some rocks, you know, monkeying around with his fishing pole or something and slid in and got wet. It's very, very, very quiet. I didn't wait long before I repositioned it just because there's so much activity over this way. Definitely fish in here.
Well, I was a 12-year-old boy once, and I remember going camping and being scared sometimes. You're trying to be tough guy. You're trying to be a young man, and the truth is you're still a scared little boy. I just hope Garrett's at peace. I hope he's very happy where he is. I think I'm going to reposition this pole one more time. It hasn't moved at all. Fish are swimming, but they're not taking the bait. So I'm going to put it out further in deeper water. If I don't get anything then, we'll just wrap it up and head back to camp and have some breakfast. Little buggers are right there by my line. They want bugs, not bait. Way out there. We'll go back to camp and have some nice breakfast, and from there we'll just pack up and hike out. And now we know a little more what to expect on the way out. We're gonna have to go up a steep uphill that we came down into the valley here, the basin. And then it's all much of it is downhill after that. Okay, I'll stop my yammering and I'll get this pole out of the water and we'll go back to camp.
So walking back to camp, I noticed something that happens to me quite a bit, especially when you're trying to find a camp at dusk before it gets too dark. I stumbled upon this little site here. What is that? Somebody's got a fire pit here with a nice flat rock to cook on. That's not really what caught my eye. What caught my eye was this nice open spot for a tent. This nice little ring of fire. And the homemade bench to sit on. How cool is that? Big old fire log to burn if you need it. Plenty of course, firewood around here, but this is just down from my campsite. And of course, I didn't walk far enough to find it. But that happens to me all the time. I find a campsite and I settle in, and then the next day I go hiking or exploring and find a better campsite. Breakfast this morning, hot cocoa, a fast break bar, some grits, and some beef sticks. Let's see if the water's boiling. Geez, I got too many things going on at once. Not quite, almost. Didn't quite boil, but it got close enough. Cheesy grits. And if you're wondering,
I'm packing out all my trash. Always bring a good Ziploc with you guys. Makes a great trash bag. And has a million other uses, like storing water if you're in a situation where you don't have anything. And bring some tin foil with you too, it's very useful. Okay. Yeah, that's good and hot. That'll still work. It's supposed to boil, but what happened is off camera, I put my hand on this rock for support and it's not solid. And I flipped all my water and everything onto the ground and had to start over. I didn't have the camera running, but who cares? We'll let that thicken up. And I'll show you what I mean here. Since this is done. See how that moves? I didn't know that, and I just flipped it all on the ground. So I definitely need more water in a little while. Well guys, camp is all cleaned up. Bob Jr.'s ready to go as usual. And happy as usual. I'll just put him in my pocket. Can't put the real Bob there. The real Bob is at home roasting in 96-degree heat, unfortunately. I do have air conditioning, but you know. This is where our tent was. Let's just do a final sweep. I always do a final sweep, not just to show that I've cleaned up, but also to inspect camp and make sure I'm not leaving anything behind. So guys, it is time to find our way back to the car. But first, water. I'm gonna, like I said, drink a liter and then fill up a liter. I'm Utah Steve. Thank you for joining me for another video. Do yourselves a favor, my friends. Get off the couch. Get outside in nature and have some fun. The views are spectacular. And if you can't get outside, just come with me. I could use the company. See you in the next one.
I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah.
Family that just passed me had full-size packs on, so they're heading back to the trailhead. I asked them where they spent the night, and they said Camas Lake. In my last video, up here at the Cuberant Basin, I hiked all the way to Camas Lake before realizing that I'd missed the turnoff to the Cuberant Basin, and then I had to backtrack. It was an hour each way, so 2 hours out of my way. I had to go all the way back to where the sign was that I somehow missed that pointed that way. That mountain is Mount Marcel, and the trail skirts around that side of it. If you're not paying attention, you miss the sign. You keep going straight up to Camas Lake. The altitude is wearing on the old lungs as usual. I live at 4,000 feet. We're somewhere around 10. So I always, even on flat ground up here, struggle to breathe. This time I'm paying attention to the sign when we get to our turnoff. This time I won't blow past it and waste a huge chunk of my day. It's about 4:30 p.m. and I've been hiking about an hour. Going slow, filming stuff for everybody to see. Anyway, let's keep moving. Well, believe it or not, this is our turnoff. If you saw my video last year, it does not look like a trail at first. It just looks like boulders. It quickly turns into one. Another change, this is the sign I missed last time. This pole here, you can see the sign is actually laying in the trees. And it looked like the Forest Service intentionally took it down because now there's this metal sign that wasn't here before. Right there. Cuberant Lake, 1.5 miles. We're not going all the way to the big lake. I'll explain all that when we get there. Camas Lake is where I hiked to last time and got completely thrown off. And this is where we began, 1.1 miles away at Pass Lake Trailhead. Now this isn't a far hike. It's very rocky and there's a lot of uphill both directions. As your grandpa used to tell you about when he walked to school in the snow. Anyway, we are going to continue towards the Cuberant Basin. Time is getting away from us. I've been so busy filming and taking pictures that it has taken me a long time just to get to the turnoff. So, as we walk through these woods, pay attention to how thick they are. These are unusually thick woods. Most of the Uintas are a little more spread out. Not a lot, but a little more. If you look around me, it's just very, very thick and dense. That'll come into play as we sit down and discuss Garrett Bardsley's disappearance when we actually get into the basin. As you can see, the trail doesn't look like much of a trail at first, but then it kind of drops right here, and then there it is. So this is very familiar from last time. All right, on to the Cuberant Basin. One thing I noticed when I came here last year was that the Cuberant Basin had a very weird vibe. Unlike anywhere I've really camped before, especially in the Uintas. Very strange. I had a friend of mine come up here after I came up, and he had never been here before. And he said the same thing. He said, I don't know what's with that place. Very strange vibes. So it is a very mysterious place. On the surface, by looking at it, it's beautiful. Looks like any other place in the Uintas, but it does have a very strange feeling once you're here. It's strange to think about, but 17 years ago, this August 20th, a 12-year-old boy and his scout troop, which included his father, hiked this very trail. Garrett hiked in, and he never came out. He must have walked by this, thought it was pretty, or maybe as being a 12-year-old, was just super excited to get up the trail to camp. When I was 12, I really got excited about going camping. I didn't always notice the incredible scenery. One thing I've noticed already is the complete silence. Not even birds. Almost eerie. Our trail continues up. One thing we won't be having up here is a campfire. As I was driving up here into the Uintas, it said the fire danger was extreme, and it is very dry. So we will just not have a campfire, not a big deal. I've done many campouts without campfires. That is Mount Marcel behind those trees. You can see how thick this forest is. You could walk into that and just vanish. Hey, finally hear a squirrel yelling at us. The trail looks like something out of a fairy tale. Like Shrek. For some reason, I think of Shrek a lot. I think I can relate to him really well. Beautiful meadow, Mount Marcel. Cuberant Basin is just through there. Okay. We just came up that, which was fairly challenging. As you can see, we're getting higher and higher. Quite the view. But that is even more daunting. As usual, the camera does it no justice. That's steep, so I'm going to take that a little bit at a time. The reason why isn't necessarily just the steepness of it. Right now, we are at 10,343 feet. So I'm 6,000 feet higher than I'm used to, and I get really winded because the air is much thinner. So when we get up to the top of this isn't even the final push, by the way. This is the push to the push. And then comes a little flat area and we drop down into the basin. A flat area with lots of trees. So we'll check our elevation when we get to the top of that ridge just before we drop down in. I will not be filming this because it's going to be a struggle. I need to focus on where I put my feet. It's pretty rocky. We just came up that push. There's Bald Mountain and Reed's Peak. You can see we're much higher. Getting a lot more level with them. And this is the final push. And it doesn't look like much, but it's steep enough. It goes there, there, and then there, and then up there, and then the rest of the way to the top. So on the other side of that is the Cuberant Basin. Now this hill that you see behind me that we're about to summit is known as Heartbreak Hill. I don't know how long it's been called that, but it seems appropriate considering somebody's child was lost up there and never found. So we're going to climb Heartbreak Hill, get to the top of it, and get on the other side of it. The other side of Heartbreak, if you will. Okay, I'll see you at the top. Well, before we disappear into the trees, look at that. I'll put the elevation of both of those mountains up here on the screen. Again, the one on the left, Bald Mountain, and the one on the right, Reed's Peak. Millions and millions of trees. Hard to even comprehend how many. Many people have come up here, not just to the Cuberant Basin, but come up into these mountains and never come home. Some of them were found deceased. Some of them were never found at all. It's just hard to even describe how amazing this is to the naked eye. As you can see, it's very easy to just vanish into the woods. Over there's Reed's Peak, and you can't even tell. And just looking this way, you can't tell anything is over here either. But it is. This is pretty much the leveled out highest point that I can find. And we're at 10,472 feet right now. Okay, we are coming out of the woods. We're not out of the woods yet. Yes, we are. Sort of. This is the Cuberant Basin. Giant and beautiful. It's actually only about a mile long and it's 0.7 of a mile wide. The actual basin down here. So there we go. Kind of windy over the pass as expected. This is the actual basin. Okay. Fantastic. Now last year I camped in those trees right over there. This year we're camping in that meadow and I'll explain why, as long as no one's down there. You can see our trail does the same thing on this side. It zigzags down. Let's make our way down. There's our meadow. And I can hear the river. The challenge now is to skirt the outside of that meadow and find a good spot to camp. Okay, we have about 2.5 hours of daylight left. I see some areas over in here that look promising. Could also go all the way back there. Just depends on what we find. And then we will sit down and discuss why I'm choosing this meadow to camp in. This is the only campsite, the only feasible campsite I can find around this entire meadow. So we have a fire pit and some old firewood and room for our tent on solid dry ground. You can see my shoes got pretty wet hiking through the bog there. It's not super deep or anything, it's just very spongy, I guess. And now I'm going to set up camp and then we will talk some more about Garrett's disappearance. Okay, as you can see, we have maybe an hour of daylight left. So here's camp. I've got the Outdoor Vitals Dominion 2 tent again, testing this all summer just to see how it does. It's a double vestibule, double entrance tent, and so far I really like it. Over here I have my roll pack with all of my essentials in it. I have my bug zapper. I brought my puffer coat on this trip. I've got the Osprey What's It backpack that my son gave me, and as you can see on this trip, some fishing gear. Because tomorrow is Independence Day, I bought a special fish bait for this trip. We have red, white, and blue America fish bait. And over here is the flattest rock and the biggest rock I could find for our food station. So not very impressive, but food bag, Osprey organizer bag. Used it the last couple of trips for food and it's worked really well. Water, I need to refill that bottle. I drank it on the way in. Sit pad / kneeling pad, some paracord, collapsible cup, lightweight cup, fuel. Our stove is inside that cook pot, and so is another fuel canister. And of course, we couldn't go anywhere without our mascot. Bob Jr. has come along for this trip. If you don't know the story, in a nutshell, I have a St. Bernard named Bob. He's too big and old and he couldn't possibly make this hike,
And since he can't come, I have a proxy mascot. This is like bringing Bob along with me. This is my trail camera from Browning. So far I haven't been too lucky with this thing. My last camp out, if you watched it, I just caught a couple of dogs peeing in my campsite while I was out hiking. So that's all I got. And finally, this is a mace pepper spray gun. It has a cartridge in it, and it will emit quite a charge of pepper spray up to 20 feet away. Anyway, this is for larger things. And then I carry this little thing of pepper spray on my person every day. So we're gonna have dinner and we're gonna sit and talk about the Cuberant Basin, about this interesting place and what happened here on August 20th, 2004. But let's start with dinner. I'm starving. What we have for dinner is probably not going to come as a surprise to regular viewers. Here are all my snacks. But here's our dinner tonight. MRE number 23, chicken pesto pasta. We are going to have pesto in the forest. Yeah, chicken pesto pasta, that's that. There's the cherry blueberry cobbler. Chocolate chip cookie. Chocolate protein drink powder. We had this in the last MRE and I really liked it, so quite pleased with that. My nemesis, cheese spread with jalapenos. Here's our heating sleeve. Our spoon, even though I have a spork. A beverage bag that I never use. Italian breadsticks to go with the pesto. I think I've had this meal before. And then we have a accessory pack with, it looks like gum, coffee, sugar, toilet paper, wipes, and matches. Last time I came up here, I didn't think to camp around here at all because some of the information I had was wrong about Garrett and his scout troop and where they were fishing and camping, and I think I've got it right this time. But I camped up the hill. I was losing daylight. I literally threw my tent up in a forest between some trees. It was a horrible campsite. I walked a ways away from it the next morning, just hiking and exploring, and found an awesome campsite. Now, why am I not camping at that one? I will tell you while we eat. Garrett Bardsley was 12 years old. He had just become an official Boy Scout. And from what I read online, this was his first Boy Scout camp out. He had just turned 12 on July 24th of 2004. His dad was a scout leader in their scout troop. It was kind of a church group, scout troop. They hiked up in here and camped, and then early the next morning, about 8 a.m., most of the scouts were back at camp asleep, just starting to wake up. Garrett and his father, Kevin, hiked to one of these lakes and were fishing, and Garrett slipped in the water and got his shoes and socks soaking wet. Garrett's dad told Garrett to walk back to camp 100 yards away, roughly, and change his socks and shoes. My guess is 8 a.m. in the Uintas, it was pretty chilly. He was probably cold. He was wearing red sweatpants, a black hoodie, Converse high tops, not your usual hiking shoes. Garrett started hiking back to camp. Mind you, he's 12. Camp isn't that far away. His dad trusts him to just make it back to camp. He watches Garrett walk away. Garrett starts getting off trail somewhere between the lake and where they're camped. Garrett's dad yells at him, "Hey, Garrett, you're getting off the trail. It's right there." He goes, "Okay," and gets back on the trail and disappears. And you've seen how thick this forest is. You've seen how quickly you can just vanish into the trees. No one saw him again. Kevin eventually hiked back to the scout camp and asked where Garrett was, and nobody had seen him. They searched the camp. They searched frantically for about 40 minutes between the lake and the camp, everywhere. When they realized he was nowhere to be found, search and rescue was notified. They searched and searched for him.
1,000 people were up here searching 40 square miles. This whole basin is 1 mile end to end and 0.7 miles side to side. They searched everywhere, up the mountain, down the mountain, arm in arm. Very methodical. They searched for days, and they even came back when they didn't find him. They came back on weekends and just kept searching and searching, and eventually they had to give up searching. It went from a search and rescue to a recovery to don't know what happened to him. It was such a short distance between where he was fishing and where they were camping that it boggles the mind. Nobody would have abducted him and taken him out of this basin. You saw the hike in. That didn't happen. Okay? You cannot carry a 12-year-old boy out of here. And, you know, there'd be kicking and screaming and yelling. There was none of that. Nobody heard Garrett scream or yell. There was one time when the dad thought he heard Garrett yell, "Dad!" And he wasn't sure. And that may be why Kevin walked back to camp looking for Garrett, because he had heard him yell. But Garrett was never found. He's still here. He's still here. Now, Garrett had taken a survival course. You know, I don't know how much he knew or understood. I didn't know Garrett. 17 years ago when it happened 2 days after my late wife's birthday, and it was the first birthday without her because she had passed away the previous December. And so I had a really hard time, because I was suddenly a single father of 2 little boys, and I heard about this story on the news, and it was just, oh. So, here's what I don't think happened. I don't think Bigfoot took him. I mentioned a theory last year from online that pterodactyls, aliens, carried him away. No, I don't think the dad was involved. I think the dad made the best judgment call he could. I do stuff like that. Well, just go do it. I'll be there in a minute. I do that all the time. By all counts, his dad is an upstanding person and has never... what would be the motive? What would be the motive? He had other children up here, older boys up here from the same family that, you know, he just had no motive. And I think he was a good dad and just wanted to go fishing with his youngest son. It was his first scout trip. Anyway, here's why I'm up here this time. Because I wanted to think about Garrett again, and I wanted to not let him slip into oblivion. Because once the news stops reporting about things like this, people forget about it. They don't see it in the media. They forget that there's a little boy up here that was never found. I've been reading some messages, and I'm trying to dig my phone out. And I found one guy who posted to a board that he was up here when Garrett went missing. Now, I need to straighten a few things out that he wrote that are wrong. And it's just about logistics. It's not about what he witnessed. I need some ibuprofen. He said, this guy who posted said he was up here. He was camped at Cuberant Lake number 4. Now, there are 6-7 lakes up here called Cuberant Lake. The biggest one is directly behind me, way up the hill a ways, and it is called Cuberant Lake. Cuberant is a Native American word, Ute Indian, I believe, that means long. And it's this big long lake. The other lakes are just numbered. Cuberant 2, Cuberant 3, Cuberant 4. He said he was at Cuberant number 4, and then in parentheses he said the big one. The big lake is actually number 1. Number 4 is a little tiny one over that way. And I have the map, the official map of the Cuberant Basin. And so that's what threw me off last time, was that he kept saying he was at Cuberant number 4, and I couldn't figure out where these guys were camped. It totally threw me. But after studying it again, going back to it, here's from Wikipedia. Here's what it says about Cuberant Lake. Cuberant Lake, or Cuberant Lake number 1, is a lake in the Uinta Mountains in Summit County, Utah, United States. It is also within the Camas Ranger District of the Uinta-Wasatch Cache National Forest and about 3,500 feet northwest of Mount Marcel. That's the mountain right here that we skirted around, but we're at the base of Mount Marcel right now. Elevation 11,340 feet at the top. The lake has an elevation of 10,426 feet. That sounds about right. Cuberant is a word derived from the Ute language meaning long. The main lake is substantially larger than the other 6 lakes in the Cuberant Lakes Basin. The other 6 are named and are unnamed and are simply referred to as Cuberant Lake number 2, Cuberant Lake number 3, etc. So there's your proof. The biggest lake that this guy was camping at is Cuberant number 1, not 4. Let me read you exactly what he wrote. This is exactly his post from the internet. I copied and pasted it. I only know him as J. He just had the letter J as his insignia on this message board. I have a couple of corrections about the Garrett Bardsley disappearance. I was camped at Cuberant number 4 when Garrett went missing and spent the day helping to look for him. Okay. In another post he said Cuberant number 4 and in parentheses the big one. So that's when I knew he was at number 1. His group was actually camped in the meadow just up from Cuberant number 2, between 1 and 2. Okay, number 1 is the big one, and coming down the hill where I camped last year just up from us is number 2, based on the map I have. The meadow is where we are now. It says, this is the meadow you pass by just after going over the pass and dropping down into the Cuberant Basin. There's no other meadow that you pass. It's right here. This is where they camped. Was it this exact spot? It could have been. It's solid ground. It's not spongy. There's a fire ring. They could have set a couple of big tents here and had a decent scout troop setup. We could be sitting where Garrett Bardsley camped. I don't know. Because there are so many conflicting stories about where specifically they were camped. There's no way for me to know exactly where he camped. He and his father Kevin had been fishing at Cuberant number 2. Now he got that right, because the next lake is Cuberant number 2, and between the lake and the meadow is only about 150 yards. This adds up. They were fishing at Cuberant number 2 that morning. Up at Cuberant number 4, meaning number 1, the one above them, we could hear members of his group yelling his name that morning he went missing. You are correct about how the sound carries up there in the basin. I've mentioned this before in my videos. I can be talking this loud and someone way over there on the other side of the meadow can hear every word I'm saying. That's very common in the Uintas. And so in the desert, it's just dead sound. It doesn't travel at all. But you get up here and it's you can hear everything. A little bit later, a member of the group came up to number 4, meaning number 1, the big one, on horseback, asking if we'd seen him. After that, we decided to spend that day helping to look for him. That night we spent up there after he disappeared was one of the most awful nights of my life, knowing that poor kid was out there in the cold while I was safe and warm in my sleeping bag. So credit to whoever you are if you wrote that. It didn't say, it just said J, or I would give you credit, but that was a huge help. What he wrote was a huge help. I just had to get the logistics right. So that's number 2. He's correct about that. It's right on the map. And this is the meadow that he said just as you come down, this is where they were camped. So we have a distance of 100 to 150 yards between this meadow and that lake. And tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., which is when they got up and went fishing together, father and son, we're going to go up there and fish. I fished it last year not knowing I was at the same lake. I was all mixed up because he kept saying number 4, and I was thinking, well, number 4 is way over there, so he must have been camped down there, and I couldn't make sense out of it. So this is the meadow they were camped in. That is the lake they fished at, and between that lake and this meadow is where Garrett Bardsley vanished. I do think there's also another
possibility, and here's why. The weather that night when he disappeared dropped to 18 degrees. It was August 20th, but if you've ever been up here in the Uintas, you know it has its own weather system. Right now in my hometown, it's 99 degrees Fahrenheit for a high and 70 for a low. Up here, I'm getting chilly right now. It's probably going to be in the upper 40s tonight. Couple that with a storm blowing through, an August storm, monsoon type weather. It said it hailed and rained that night, and his socks and shoes were wet. It was 8 a.m. It could have been cold. It was probably, we'll say how cold it is in the morning. You know, it's July, but August weather's even hotter usually, so our weather's pretty much the same as it may have been in 2004. I don't think we're gonna get hit by any freak storms, but it'll give me something to think about. How cold is that water? How cold were his feet? And if he got lost or distracted and that storm blew in, the problem I have with him just getting lost and taking cover, you saw these huge boulders. There's tons of them. Some of them are stacked and they have little places you can crawl into. A 12-year-old boy could fit into. He could have taken shelter somewhere based on his wilderness survival class. I agree with that. But the problem I have is that storm did not blow in until overnight. And he went missing at 8 a.m. And I checked the weather in the Farmer's Almanac before I came up here, and it was 70 degrees up here during the day. You know, 50s at night. That freak storm dropped the temperature. Probably a cold front blew through and, you know, caught him off guard. But all day long he was missing. Would he have taken shelter from perfectly normal weather? That's what trips me up. That's what makes me think he may not have. I don't think he was hypothermic for 150 yards from a lake by getting his feet wet. I think he could have, if he did take shelter somewhere, he could have been. The other option, of course, is that an animal took him. That is not common at all. Most animals stay away. The only thing that would stalk you is a mountain lion. Bears typically are even skittish around people. Black bears. We don't have grizzlies or brown bears, so before I get lectures about that, there's only black bears up here, and you can scream and scare a black bear away. Not always, but most of the time. Mooses can be territorial and, you know, charge you or whatever, but the only thing that's going to really carry you off, kill you and carry you off that I can think of would be a mountain lion. And they say you can live within a mile of a mountain lion and never know it's there because they're so silent and they will stalk you. And so that is a possibility. However, they searched for him for months, weeks and months. They even searched for him the next spring after all the snow melted. They didn't find anything. No red sweats, no black hoodie, no Converse. Someone found in one of these boulder fields a Nike sock, and one of the search and rescue people said, "No, that's mine. I took it off to change my socks and I dropped it. I didn't realize I dropped it." Turned out to be someone else's sock. But Garrett's mom swore that that was his sock. Maybe she was just being a hopeful mom that her son was okay. That's possible, and it's understandable. But it was a half mile from here, like that way. Why would he, when the trail was pretty clearly marked between the lake and here? And I'd even experimented last year. I cut right through, you see how thick this is. I cut through it just to see how quickly you could get lost and disoriented. And I ended up hiking to the lake through this brush, and it was horrible. It was so thick and difficult. It's possible to disappear in that. So many theories, but this time I'm open-minded to a wild animal, to the elements, the time frame that it happened, how quickly he disappeared. The weather wasn't really bad until later. He heard him yell "Dad" once and then nothing else. No shred of anything was found. Feel free to discuss down below because the last video got a lot of discussion, a lot of views, and we keep talking about Garrett because I don't want him to be forgotten. He would be 29 years old this month.
He would be a dad. He would be a husband. Who knows what he would have done for a living. He would have been a man by now. And he never got to be. He went on one camp out with the scouts and disappeared. Here's our pesto. Where's my spoon though? So good. And warm. No complaints here. This is a good meal. I was gonna wrap it up with that, but I've decided to eat the cookie. There is my cookie. So my goal now is just to get the bear bag hung. And frankly, just sit in the tent. These bugs aren't biting me at all, but holy crap, are they hovering. And we will turn on the bug light. It is now 9:05 p.m. The sun has gone down. This camera compensates for darkness for light. Brings in more light. So it looks earlier in the day than it is. Most of our exploring will be tomorrow. And we're going to try to recreate what happened with Garrett tomorrow morning. We will fish about 8 a.m. I just want to follow the trail back and just try to make some sense out of it. Well, the sun has disappeared over the horizon. Good night, Garrett, wherever you are. It's 9:30 p.m. The bear bag is up there on the hill. You can see it hanging from that tree. Didn't take too long to hang it. That's it. Let's go to bed. Well, guys, I am in the tent, obviously. I'm all hunkered down and cozy and toasty. Everything's charging. I've got my water, I've got my pepper gun, I've got my knife. If anyone's worried about my well-being, don't worry. It's been a very peaceful night. I appreciate you listening to me and spending time with me here in the Cuberant Basin. It's very quiet. I can hear the river running, and that's about it. So my friends, I will see you in the morning. Sweet dreams. Good night. Good morning and welcome to 6 a.m. in the Cuberant Basin. I've been awake for about an hour. I don't usually get up at 5 a.m. In fact, I'm not a morning person at all. Now, I've been thinking about their choice of campsite with Garrett Bardsley's scout troop. I want to show you this field. On the surface, this looks like a great place for a scout troop to camp, for anyone to camp, but a large group of kids and their leaders to camp here, this would be ideal, right? The problem is as soon as you walk through it, you sink. You see how wet my shoes are? It's not cold wet. It's probably 50 degrees right now, maybe upper 40s. In fact, I'd go with upper 40s. 50's a little more comfortable than what I am right now. But you can see how I'm just sinking, just walking. You can see the water pool at my feet. Okay, so this is very, I wouldn't say swampy, but definitely boggy and mushy and spongy and wet. There is no way anyone in their right mind would set up a tent here. As soon as they got in their tent, it would get soaking wet on the floor. And when I got here yesterday, I explored the perimeter. And the only place I could find camp worthy is where I am, right there. And it's the only place where there was a legitimate place to put a tent and where there's a fire ring and the ground is
hard and dry like it should be. There's just nothing else in here that you could. I showed you this fire pit yesterday, and it looks like maybe it was put here a long time ago, maybe at a time when it wasn't quite so squishy and wet. But look, I mean, it may not even be a fire pit. It's kind of strange. There's water all around it, and it's more of a pile of rocks. It's definitely intentional, almost like someone either had a fire ring there and then filled it in with rocks. I don't know why you would do that, other than, I mean, if you're going to leave no trace, you would disperse the whole fire ring. Ugh, it's really, God, even the rocks are sinking under my feet. Unless they were burying something. And I'm not referring to Garrett Bardsley. There's not a 12-year-old boy in there. But it's very strange that someone would, in the middle of this field, this spongy, wet field, pile some rocks right there. I don't know why. It makes no sense. And you've got this little stream that flows pretty much all around the entire perimeter, including way over by my camp. The entire perimeter of this field. And it feeds into that big pond, that stagnant, nasty pond, and that's why there are so many bugs here. If I were a thinking man, and I try to be, I would say that's the only place you can camp. My feet are wet. I can't imagine the scouts setting up camp and being okay with that. Now, I'm thinking 17 years later after the fact, so who knows, you know. Maybe it wasn't this swampy in 2004. But I'm thinking this has probably remained unchanged for a very long time. When I came up last year, I just bypassed this because I didn't realize this was the meadow where they camped. Now I know, so I camped here to get more of the experience. There is a path that runs along here. I followed it. And it kind of dissipates and turns into nothing. And then over in there, it's just swamp. So if this is where they camped, as that gentleman said online, I think if it was a woman, then my apologies. Whoever posted what I read you yesterday about Garrett's disappearance when they were camping at Cuberant number 1, not number 4. Number 4 is actually through those trees and it's very small. If they're accurate, if they're right about the scout troop camping here in this meadow, there's even back there, it's the same story. I don't need to stomp around in the swamp any more than I have to. I'm gonna change my socks here in a little bit. But if that's the case, this truly is the only place you can camp around this meadow. I walked clear around there and saw nothing but swampy, spongy ground. I was seriously thinking I might not be able to camp here at all, thinking maybe they didn't camp here after all. And then I stumbled on this and I was like, wait, this is the campsite in the whole field. So if I were to guess, if things were exactly as they are now, back in 2004, there's a really good chance that I am camped where they were camped. It's big enough for a couple of large tents. There's a fire pit. The lake is right up there. It's possible to cut through this thick, very thick forest to get to the lake. But there is a trail over here. Our trail in came from down there and it cuts across here and continues up into the Cuberant lakes. So here's the plan this morning. We're gonna have breakfast. I've already kind of started. I needed to warm up. We're gonna have some grits and a Cliff Bar. Nothing spectacular for breakfast today. Something warm and something energizing. And then we're going to go fishing at Cuberant Lake number 2, right along the trail here, up there, up in those trees. And if you saw my last video series a year ago about the Cuberant Basin, about Garrett's disappearance, that is where I camped last time. Not knowing where they camped, not knowing where they fished. Turns out I fished the very same lake. So we're going to fish it again at about the same time in about 2 hours. About an hour and a half I'll hike up there and we'll fish there and try to take in the experience that they may have had that morning on August 20th, 2004. Now, I have to say, temperatures are in the upper 40s. I'm not going to even give it 50. It's chilly. I need this through the night. It got even colder, probably low 40s. Got pretty chilly. As long as I was under my down quilt and on top of my jungle blanket, I was fine. But if my head stuck out and arms stuck out, I got pretty cold. I woke up a few times with the chill. Sometimes my beanie would slip off in my sleep and I would have to hunt it down and stick it back on. So it's pretty chilly. First thing in the morning, hiking into a shady forest to fish, and you slip and get your feet soaking wet in the lake. You would not want to just stand around waiting to catch a fish. That is why Garrett's dad, Kevin, said, "Hey buddy, go back to camp and change your shoes and socks." He was looking out for him. He was worried about how cold it was. Now, it's not freezing by any means, but as I said before, late that night, or later that night, a hail and rainstorm blew through here and temperatures dropped to 18 degrees overnight in August. Not unheard of for the Uinta Mountains. We are in high elevation wilderness. I can see that storm rolling in that night, and I can see Garrett having to take shelter and not being found, perhaps becoming hypothermic and dying in a crevice somewhere. At the same time, he disappeared around 8 a.m. Storm didn't roll in until evening. Why would he crawl into some rocks for shelter if there was no storm yet? Doesn't add up. Just my thoughts. Being here really makes you think, and a lot of the people who have opinions online have never been here and never understood how could he get lost 100 yards from camp. Well, when we hike up the trail, you'll see how that was a possibility. Either way, he's still here somewhere. I'm not coming to any conclusions. I'm just giving my thoughts and feelings and opinions. These are not facts. It's possible they didn't camp here at all. It's possible that what I read online is not correct. But I'm going off of what I learned over the last year. So. We have a boil. We should probably lance it. Haha. My phone. It was in my pocket and I was thinking out loud, thinking about Garrett, just kind of processing some thoughts. I tend to talk to myself and think out loud when no one's around. I guess it's, you know, I've gotten so used to talking to the camera that when no one's around, I've started talking to myself. Anyway, I was just thinking out loud that if someone ever finds Garrett up here, it's going to be an accident. They're going to stumble across
clothing, bones, something, and not someone coming up here and actually searching for him. I doubt they'll find it. If they do, it'll be a total accident. And as I said that, my phone went off with a female voice, and I didn't make out what she said, but it was like Alexa kind of answering me. So I froze for a second. I didn't know where it came from. I pulled my phone out and looked at it, and nothing is running. No apps are running at all. So I don't know why my phone spoke, but then it did it a second time, and I still didn't understand what it was saying. So one of those female electronic type voices, and I've never heard my phone do that, and I have no idea why it responded when it did, but it was kind of freaky. Peanut butter banana Cliff Bar, up close and personal. There you go. Those are not raisins. I hate raisins. They're dark chocolate chunks. Yeah, that's not bad. It has that, if you've ever eaten dehydrated bananas, it has a very strong banana flavor that way. I can't taste the peanut butter as much, but the chocolate really accents everything. It's pretty good. It's nice and thick, ready to eat. I would show you a better close-up, but apparently my camera has facial recognition, and it's determined that my face is way more important than my grits. Whatever that means. Kiss my grits. Buttery, cheesy. These are the cheddar cheese ones. Maybe on the next outing I'll up my game and get some different, see if you can see in there, get some different flavors. Living on the edge, Steve. Got my little backpack on with all my fishing gear, my snacks, my roll pack, my water bottles, everything I need. Getting my socks soaking wet is actually a good thing for this trip, because it's helped me to appreciate how much worse it was for Garrett when he stepped in an actual lake. I've just been walking through a marshy field. Now in 2004, if we go back in time a little bit, backpacking gear has improved immensely. It's gotten lighter and more waterproof, warmer, you name it. The fact that he was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, all cotton, probably cotton socks as well, tells me that they were probably camping old school. Dad was probably wearing Levi jeans. Cotton does not respond well to cold. Once it's wet, you can get very, very cold. I've got wool socks on, which helps. Wool is supposed to keep you warm even if it gets wet. So if he got his sweats wet, his socks, his shoes, he would have been very cold and wet, and no way to dry out except to go back to camp and make that happen. And he never made it back to camp. This is a very rocky trail. In some places, it's hard to even tell that it's a trail. I'm getting very winded. Again, I'm not used to this elevation. So look at the trail and I'll show you what I mean. That's the trail. Doesn't really look like one. It looks like a pile of rocks. If you look down, you can make it out. If you look up, it's not so obvious to see where it's headed. Anyway, our lake is only right up here. Camp is right down there. On a trail like this, you have to make sure every footstep counts. You could easily roll your ankle, even break your ankle, fall and smack your knee, break an arm or leg. I'm filming this, but I'm not really looking at what I'm filming. I'm watching where my feet are going. So, just be careful, you know, when you're out hiking. Especially my situation right now. I'm a long way from getting any kind of help, and I have no phone signal. Already coming up on the lake, Cuberant number 2. Now, I am not going to Cuberant number 1 or 3, 4, 5, 6. My whole goal through all of this has been to simply recreate what route I think Garrett took, where he was fishing, where he was camped. Okay, so when I was here last time, I hiked past the meadow and I came to this lake. It's right over there. I have literally been hiking 10 minutes with getting water. And I'm already here at the lake. And when I camped before, you can see there are a lot of makeshift type campsites. I think I even passed this one up on my way in last year and decided there was nowhere to put a tent. All those rocks. I literally hiked up into those trees knowing the lake was right here, the trail was right here. And I found the only convenient spot I could see before the sun went down. As you can see, it's now coming up. And I set up my tent and hurried and ate dinner for the night and then passed out. What I didn't know is just a few yards from where I was camped was a really good campsite. But this forest is so thick and there's so many rocks that I literally couldn't see the forest for the trees. And I ended up only finding that campsite later. I was camped in something like this, you know, just squeezed in somewhere. I did have a fire pit, but it barely qualified as a campsite. Now, it is 10 minutes to 8 in the morning. And this is the place that Garrett and his dad were fishing. There are fish in here. I fished it last year but didn't have any luck. And he only had to hike a little ways to the trail right here and head down to camp. So the question is, where would an obvious place to fish be? And if you're just hiking up to fish first thing in the morning, you probably wouldn't hike all the way around. Maybe you would. Maybe you'd be motivated. But the last time I was here, I had this whole lake to myself as well.
And my guess would be to just walk right down here to the shore and fish pretty much from where I was fishing last year. I fished near that tree, that fallen tree. They could have fished here. They could have fished there. He would have slipped and fallen into this lake and hiked back up to the trail this way, taking the wrong route, and his dad yelling at him, "Hey, not that way, that way." So I'm not sure what he would have seen Garrett doing wrong. But I'm an old man with lots of experience in the outdoors, so I can decipher where the trail is and everything. Garrett was 12, completely inexperienced. The question is, do we fish over where I fished last time? Or do we just fish right here? You can see how it could happen, okay? Say you're 12 years old and you say, I'm going to stand on that rock. My 12-year-old would do just that. He would stand right there. And he would slip from the top of that pointy rock and fall right in the water. Right here. So this is it. This is where we are going to fish. I think instead of over there, I might get snagged on that log and whatnot. So we'll just go right here. It's not ice cold, of course, but it's not what I would call warm by any means if your feet went in there. Man, I would want to change my socks and shoes too. There's a flat place on this rock. Perfect for someone to sit or stand. Perfect for someone to slip and go in the water. Then again, they could have hiked way over there and fished. They could have said, hey, that looks like a good spot right there, you know, and hiked all the way over there. And maybe he hiked from way over there, finding his way around the lake, back to the meadow and got lost. That seems a lot more plausible than from right here, even though this is where we're going to fish from. So let's say they hiked way over there because it was early in the morning. They felt motivated and energized after a good night's rest. And then they headed over there and were fishing when he fell in and had to walk around the lake and all the way back down to the meadow. Cuberant number 1, the one that the guy said was number 4, the big lake is up here, up in here. This is Cuberant number 2. And even his story corroborates that they were fishing at number 2. Let me show you the map I have. Okay, so as you can see, down here is our meadow. We hiked up to here. We're at number 2. And the one that he said was number 4 is actually number 1. Number 4 is way over here. So they were camped in the meadow as you come in, he said, between number 2 and the meadow is where he disappeared. And they were camped down in our meadow and hiked up here to fish. So we were at Cuberant number 2. That is what the entire loop looks like, which we will not be exploring. You can even see there's a number 7 way over here. So there's a lot of little lakes. But this is the big one that all of the lakes are named after. And you can see that they just are assigned numbers. They are not named, but the big lake is called Cuberant Lake, also number 1. So there's my clarification on what I was talking about yesterday. Right now it is 8:05 a.m. and this is the time that Garrett would have fallen in the water. We have our America bait on the hook, ready to catch some American trout.
think what we'll do is fish here for a little bit and then move down a little bit and just try a few different spots. Not so much to catch a fish, but just look at different places they could have been fishing when Garrett fell in. There's so much stuff written online. How could he possibly have gotten lost that far from camp? Why would his dad send him off by himself? Blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of answers to those things. I have a 12-year-old. I trust him. He's smart. I have to say, though, I probably wouldn't say go back to camp and change your shoes. I'm not comfortable with that. I would have told him to hang on, and I would have packed up and went with him. And I'm not judging the dad for doing what he did. Everyone is different, and that's just how I would have done it. This time of morning, it's now 8:20, and there's no one here but me fishing. They probably had the lake to themselves. I think the time frame between Kevin telling his son to go back to camp and following behind him was only about 20 minutes. So he sat here for a little bit, probably gathering up stuff, reeling in the line, the whole thing, and then followed his son back. He probably told him to go back, and because it wasn't very long. It's not like he sat up here and kept fishing after telling his son to, head back to camp. So he probably didn't move super fast. He just thought his son was headed down the trail. Apparently his son, I'm trying to figure that one out, how his son went the wrong direction or went off trail or something, and his dad stopped him and said, "Hey, no, right there, that's the trail." And then from a distance he heard Garrett yell, "Dad!" And maybe that's when he just grabbed his stuff and started heading back. It must have been terrifying, just terrifying, to get back to camp and find out no one had seen him. He hadn't been back to camp. He's somewhere between here and camp. I'm convinced of it. They searched this whole area. They searched 40 square miles with 1,000 people, arm in arm. But I'm convinced that it happened between here and camp. I don't think it happened miles from here or whatever, or way up there. He wandered. It has happened where kids have wandered off and gotten lost, and when they found them, they were incredibly far from where they were last seen. But I think Garrett headed the right direction. It's what happened between here and camp that matters. I don't think he was headed back to camp and lost his sense of direction so bad that he ended up on top of that mountain or on top of that mountain or up Mount Marcel. It's ridiculous to think for me. I could see a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old even getting completely lost and just heading wherever. But a 12-year-old who's taken a survival class, who's been in the Boy Scouts, whose dad is actively involved in outdoor activities, has probably taught him a lot. He has older brothers who also know this stuff. I find it hard to imagine that he just wandered off aimlessly somewhere. It doesn't add up. I'm going to give this 5 more minutes. And if nothing bites, we're going to hike a little further down the trail. We may even go to the far end of the lake. I've never been there. Okay. Spot number 2. I'm out there in the middle. God. I'm eating so many bugs. Like they're leaving my skin alone, but they sure like my mouth. So look at this here. Look at this. Look at this here. So if you look at this right here, here's where I'm standing. Here's where I cast from. And you can see it slides down into the water. One step a little bit over the line, and it's slimy and slippery, and in you go. So, could have happened here. Who would think that something as simple as slipping in a lake and getting your socks wet could be the last time anyone would ever see you alive again? It's hard to imagine, but Sometimes we do the most mundane things, and the next thing we know, we're gone. Life is very, very fragile. All of this right out here, lily pad city. And I tried to fish that the last time I was here. I tried to fish up close to it, like right over in here, and I got snagged every time. So we're actually going to hike to the other side of it. There's some rocks right in here, and I've seen a lot of fish jumping over there. Way more than over here. So let's head over there. Now you would think there would be an easy to find trail going around this lake, but there's not. This is the way. And I wouldn't think that they would hike up here and try to find a spot to fish that seems really difficult to get to. But maybe they saw the fish jumping over there, decided to come over this way. If they did come clear over here to fish, it would also explain why Garrett would get lost trying to find the trail. Because the actual trail is not only back that way, but up. If you follow the lake, it meets the lake down at that end, but if you continue following the trail, it kind of goes up through there. This is not the trail. This barely qualifies as a trail. I don't think this is the trail. See, I'm confused about where the actual trail is, because this looks like you're just following these rocks through here. It kind of looks like a trail a little bit. We're on the other side of the lily pads now, and almost to where I want to be. All right, see, we have to kind of stagger through these boulders. I've never filmed my feet so much in my life. But the reason I am is I want to show the kind of terrain we're dealing with, that Garrett would have been dealing with, that the searchers would have been dealing with. Oh. So we are going to fish from right here, right from these rocks. You can see the water is calm and deep. It gets deep quicker right here than it does over here, over there, I should say. And I think this wide open space is where most of the fish probably are. I've been watching them jump. See? They're coming out of the water like crazy right here. So this will be our best chance at catching anything, I think. There it goes. That fish wanted that bait. He pulled my pole over. Yeah, we finally caught one. Woo, he's a fighter. He does not want to be reeled in.
course, what fish does. Yep, I see him. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, 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 hey. There's no need for that. Whoa! Knocked my camera over. Looks like he swallowed the hook whole. That's a brook trout. Tell by the markings. Not very big. But in the fall, that's gonna make someone really happy. He'll probably be a good size. So, we gotta cut him loose. We'll just cut it off. Typically these treble hooks are made to dissolve in the fish's guts. So he still has a decent chance at survival, if you're wondering. But we gotta get him back in the water first. Sometimes they're in shock. They need that water to move through their gills. There he goes. He's gone. Well, I have a new American nugget on there. They like the red, white, and blue, apparently. So we're gonna cast off that way this time. See how we do. Same rock, same place, just different direction. So the line is right out in the middle there, where I've seen some bigger fish jumping. See if we can catch one more before we head back to camp. Right now it is almost 10 a.m. Ultimately what I'd like to do is have lunch up here and then pack up and head home. My line is sinking, my line is jumping. Holy crap. Wait for it. Come on. You got some fight in you, right? Show it what you're made of. I don't want to pick up the pole too soon. I do that all the time. I'm convinced they're on there and they're really just testing it. And then I reel it in and nothing's there, but I'm pretty sure he's on there. So, let's see what we got, if anything. I think I might have lost him. Battery's not much of a fighter. No, he's on there. He's on there. He's fighting now. Oh boy. Oh yeah. Come here, you. Woohoo! Another brookie. Big one. That's the kind you can eat. I knew I was going to catch one I'd want to eat. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, there he is. He's big enough to eat. He's meaty. He's been around a while. Whoa. And he swallowed it. So we'll have to cut that out like we did the other one right after I take his picture. So next time I'll have to bring a frying pan and some oil. And we can at least cook him with the camp stove. Time to let him go. Once they get the oxygen back in their gills, they take off. It'll take him a minute. He's close to 12 inches, I'd say. He's a pretty good size. Very thick and meaty. Would have made a delicious lunch. The other one, it took him a minute too, and then he kind of came to and swam off. Kind of in shock after being out of the water. See if I can poke him with something. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. That's what I mean. You know, once they come to, They're gone. I don't even see him down there. He's gone. So that was pretty cool. That didn't take long at all. The last time I fished here, I didn't do well at all. Nothing even bit my line, but I only fished down there. So let's say Garrett's dad knew this lake well and knew they could catch fish here and knew this was the spot. It's possible. When I stood at the other end of the lake and looked this direction, I saw the fish jumping, and that's what drew me down here. So look at all these rocks you could slip and fall on and go right into the water. It's just a huge boulder field. And there are some theories that he took shelter in a boulder field up there, even over there. Don't know if they caught any fish here, but I certainly have. And I'll bet you I could keep catching them. But I think that's as long as I'm going to fish. I'm going to hang out here for a while and relax and enjoy the peace and quiet. Take some pictures. And then we'll head back to camp. Well, we're going to say goodbye to Cuberant Lake number 2. And as we hike back, we're going to pay attention to the trail and how difficult it might have been for Garrett to find his way back to camp. His dad probably pointed him that direction. And if he was here on these rocks, that's where the best fishing is. Maybe he sent him off that way to find the trail. He could be missing anywhere between there and all the way down there. A lot of rock hopping to do until we get back to the main trail. And even then, that trail is very rocky and hard to decipher. But what a beautiful place. But Garrett had his whole life ahead of him. And that's what really tears me up. He was only 12. And for me, that was so long ago. And I've had so many both amazing experiences in life and difficult ones. And 12 years old seems like a lifetime away now. Well, it is. I won't tell you how many years it's been for me since I was 12. Somewhere up here in this incredibly beautiful place, a little boy disappeared and was never seen again after fishing with his dad right here at this lake. See what I'm talking about here. I'm having to decide how to get over there. Do I walk down there and go over the log? Do I hop up this? It looks like the best bet is to go down here and navigate through this. And I'm thinking like a grown man with lots of experience who still makes mistakes all the time. Imagine how hard this would be to figure out if you were 12. Ooh. Jeez. Okay, now there's something of a trail that runs along the lake from here. You can see where we came from. It just looks like a whole lot of nothing as far as finding a trail goes. So all we have to do at this point is follow this back to where we started fishing, and then we can easily find the main trail back to camp. Right? Here's a look at some of the boulder fields that they had to search through, where they think maybe he could have taken shelter in these rocks. There are so many, and they're huge. The camera doesn't show, but that one right in the middle of the screen is the size of two of me in length and maybe one of me in width. It's huge. And there are all those little holes in between that somebody could easily fit in, especially someone small. Why he would have left the main trail right here and gone up there, I don't know, when he was this close to camp. Even if I were 12 and I wasn't very far from camp and it started storming, I would probably dive under a tree or something until the hail stopped or whatever he was dealing with later in the day, and persevered back to camp because it's not that far away. It was already soaking wet. I don't know, I'm just trying to think different ways about this, trying to approach it the way I would as a dad, and maybe even as a 12-year-old. A lot of nooks and crannies in there you could hide in. All over the place. Well, we are back at camp. I took a bit of a spill getting the water. I refilled the bottle. It's got the iodine going. I debated on whether or not to show me slip into the water while I was getting the bottle filled up. For the sake of my pride alone, I don't, no one wants to be seen tripping and falling or slipping or whatever. But because we're up here, the whole reason we're up here is because a young man slipped into the water and got his shoes and socks wet. That's all that happened. It's what happened after that that we don't know. And so let me show you my right foot and my pant leg. You can see that I got pretty drenched. My entire sock is saturated. This one's still okay. The shoe's wet, but my sock's mostly dry from this morning. This one went in. And luckily, right over there on that rock are my drying socks from yesterday from walking in all the spongy crap
Well, both this morning and yesterday. And they're almost dry, so good news that way. I am being swarmed by some kind of fly hornet mixture. I don't know what that bug is, but he's very persistent. So I actually broke out the towelette wipe and just covered myself in it. But he's still hovering around me. He's ugly. He looks like a fly, but he's got the black and white stripes of a hornet. Not as prominently yellow. Kind of a dull yellow. I don't know, some kind of biting bug, and it's giving me the chills. I got goosebumps just from thinking about how creepy he looked. So I'm gonna take my shoes and socks off and let my feet air out. They've been sitting and saturated in river water for some time now, and it's almost 11. So we're gonna have ramen and probably something with it for lunch, and then we're gonna clean up camp and hike out. We'll talk a little bit more about Garrett. That is the sole reason I'm up here. I could have gone anywhere in the Uintas, but I've eaten more bugs on this trip than I've ever eaten on any trip. Unintentionally, of course. Anyway, the whole reason I wanted to come up here is because it was a year ago to the weekend that I was up here last. It was a full moon. It was very eerie and creepy last time. I haven't gotten that vibe this time, other than being sad for what happened to Garrett and reliving and walking the steps he would have likely walked, camping where he may have camped. Last time I was just up here taking it in, and this time I had more of a defined plan. It's been a very humbling experience to be up here, and one that's made me very grateful for what I have. Got another one. Ugh. One more thing I want to show you before I start lunch, because nothing's more appetizing than a whole bunch of mosquito carcasses, including our friend the mosquito hawk right there at the bottom. As you can see, we have a carousel of mosquito carcasses. Alright, so that is pretty cool. Now we will have lunch. I just opened my pot to rinse it out because I left the grits in it, you know, and discovered this guy inside it having a feast. He's a big ant. I think he's giant. Here, buddy, let me give you a boost back to your motherland. Come on, there you go, all the way. Bing. I think I just fried a mosquito. Suddenly smelled like insect. Okay. I finally accepted that the bugs win. It's not mosquitoes, it's those nasty flies. And they're biting flies. They don't like my bug repellent, but that doesn't stop them from landing on me over and over and over. So they're making me nuts. This is a first. We're going to have lunch like this. It's kind of funny. You out there with all the bugs and me safe inside my tent. I never eat in my tent.
And that's because it's a bad idea. You can end up leaving food in here and it attracts animals. I'm gonna finish my noodles. I'm gonna have my candy bar. I'm gonna pack up and I'm gonna get the freak out of town. And we'll talk one more time about Garrett before we leave. Well guys, I've left it as I found it. Bob Jr. here has been hanging out with this little ant where I spilled my ramen. That little guy has been having himself a feast. He hit the jackpot, I'll tell you what. He's been mostly just drinking the broth that overflowed. I've got my pack all packed. I just need to throw the pole in the top, really. I've got an empty liter of water and a full liter of water right there. And this is where our tent was. Everything is as I found it. Not even Bob Jr. is on the rock. I have him in my pocket. Goodbye to this campsite. Has served us well. Let's go through the boggy swamp, which really sucks because I put on those socks that were drying on that rock and my feet are warm and dry again. And I'm about to go through Mordor or whatever. So somewhere down there, Garrett Bardsley rests. Here's hoping someday somebody finds him. And if not, at least he's resting somewhere beautiful. Goodbye to the Cuberant Basin. Until next time. Well, that is it, my friends. Thank you for joining me on another spectacular adventure. Do yourselves a favor. Get off the couch. Get outside. And have some fun in nature. The views are spectacular. And if you can't get off the couch, come along with me. As always, I could use the company. We'll see you in the next adventure. Take care. Well, hello my friends, welcome back to the Uinta Mountains. Kind of overcast at the moment, but as we know,
These storm clouds often have a tendency to just blow over by evening, so we'll see what happens. This truck may or may not look familiar to you. If you watched my video last year when I went to the North Fork trailhead when my car was broken down, my friend Kent loaned me his truck so that I could go on that trip. This is his truck, and no, my car is not broken down. So why do I have Kent's truck? Well, that's because I also have Kent. My buddy Kent from work, a fellow officer at the hospital, is joining me for this trip. Say hi, Kent.
Hello.
Today we're at the Pass Lake Trailhead, and we're going to be hiking this way into the Cuberant Basin. We'll be returning to the area where young Garrett Bardsley disappeared on August 20th, 2004. I've been up here a couple times and made videos up here about him, so I won't rehash too much of the information, but I got to get this thing on and then we'll hit the trail. Looks like it's been raining. Here's where the trail starts.
You there yet, Dad?
Yep, we're here. That's it. 1.1 miles to the Cuberant Junction. That's where our turnoff is. I missed that one year and went straight to Camas Lake. So now I know where Camas Lake is.
Awesome.
All right. Another sign.
Your fishing line got cut on.
Uh-oh.
Everything up in there got a name. Or something called a big hole or something.
These are new. These weren't here before. Right.
Got all my plaques and stuff. Retirement plaque and
Here's our turnoff. Trail. Cuberant Lakes. See how it doesn't look like a trail? That's why I missed it and went on to Camas Lake a couple years ago. And this is the trail to Camas Lake. Look at that. All that deadfall. I'll throw some footage up here of what that looked like a couple of years ago. You can probably loop around the trees, but we're going that way.
a lot of you probably last weekend before school.
Oh yeah, that's just for perspective. Bald Mountain and Reed's Peak, or vice versa, I'm not sure. But we're working our way up. When we reach the top, we'll be above all of these trees. Coming up on some more signage. Trail's gonna go that way. Oh, they rerouted the trail. So it used to be where that pile of tree was.
Yeah.
You went straight up to Camas Lake. Now you have to come up here and turn off this way. So,
Past Lake Trail. Okay.
yeah.
So we got a mile and a half to go?
Yep. Well, to the big lake if we want to go up that far. But the basin is just isn't that far.
I can walk.
A little higher up the mountain. I have to go up this now. Kind of blows. So there's our view. We just came up that monster. That thing was steep, super rocky. Definitely not for a casual hiker. Kent needs water. Our next step is to zigzag up this, and right up there where the trees are is the top. We'll cut through a forest through there, and then we'll step right down into the Cuberant Basin, where Garrett Bardsley still is, 19 years later, almost to the day. Well, we pretty much made it. I'll go right up through these trees, it'll level out, but look at this view. Wow. The air is really thin. That's one hell of a view. All right, the worst is over. Now we're gonna be able to drop down into the basin. We made it to the basin, Cuberant Basin. Isn't that something? It's all downhill. A meadow right over there is where they were camped.
Sweet.
I don't know if we'll camp there. It might be swamp. That's what it was a couple years ago. And there's the Cuberant Basin. Here's some perspective. Got some backpackers coming up. And that meadow, I camped there 2 years ago, right in that spot. And that is where Garrett and his scout troop were camped. And then right up through these trees is the lake they were fishing at.
And we'll check both of them out. You can tell avalanche has come through here. The last time I was here, and look at these trees. Look how bent over they are. That's crazy. A lot of deadfall in the meadow here. This little meadow. I'll throw some B-roll on here so you can see what it looked like before. So that's where we were. We just came down this, almost to the meadow. This is where the scouts were camped. August 20th, 2004. A couple of years ago I camped here, like I said, over on the edge of the meadow. It's the only place I could camp because the rest of the meadow was too marshy and swampy. You can see the immense boulder fields and the lake that they were fishing at is up that hill. And we'll see more of that later. Right now our goal is to outrun that, get our shelters set up. We need to find a camp spot. Still too swampy to camp anywhere in there, so we're gonna keep going up the trail. I think there's a decent campsite up here by the lake. Right up here is a waterfall, and Kent is also right up here. This is where I get my water usually, right here. Ironically, a couple of years ago I was getting water and I slipped and went in the water. Just like Garrett Bardsley. So this is the trail between the meadow and the lake where Garrett Bardsley supposedly vanished. It's clearly marked. I mean, it's rocky, but you can follow it really easily. About 150 yards from the lake to the trail, to the meadow where the rest of the scouts were. If you want a more detailed version of the events, I'll link my previous videos below. I don't want to just repeat myself every time I come up here. But honestly, if you just follow this trail, it's going to take you right to the meadow and right to the lake, vice versa. So here's the lake. Now we just need to find a good campsite. There's the lake. Here's Kent. Lots of thunder. And here is camp. I found this campsite a couple of years ago. Tried to remember where it was. So will this work? It's a flat spot for a tent. I'll have to figure out where to hang my hammock. But fire pit. It's all ours. Well, I barely got the tarp thrown up in time. All my gear's down here. I'm in my rain suit. Camera's fogging up. It opened up on us. There's Kent. He's over there struggling to get his tarp set up. So I'm gonna try to set up my hammock in here while it's raining. Usually the hammock goes up, or the tarp goes up later, but not today. Still not a perfectly anchored tarp, but it'll do for now to keep the elements off me. There's a backpacker down there by the lake that's just standing in the rain, getting dumped on. Anyway, that's where things are. Quite the downpour. Yeah, it's really coming down. This is nuts. There's a couple of backpackers down there. I think I'm gonna see if they want to come over here under the tarp. They're just standing there eating snacks and getting dumped on. I think we passed each other on our way in. And I invited him up here to get under my tarp, and he's like, "Oh, we're fine." But she was like, "Actually, I could use some shelter to get situated under." So she came up here and reorganized herself and covered herself better with the rain gear. Told them they were welcome to just stay in here. I wasn't going to hang out in here with them and be a weirdo, but they're seasoned backpackers. They've been on the Appalachian Trail. They're an older couple, probably in their late 60s, I'd say. So anyway, it was nice talking to them for a little bit. It's not raining nearly as hard, and it looks like it might blow over. Still sprinkling. That lighter stuff is what's headed this way. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna have some lunch. I got PB&J, vegetable crackers. Starving. We got up here, we were both pretty hungry. We just sat down and started eating some snacks and talking, and the sky opened up. I was gonna put peanut butter and jelly on this cracker, but I don't think so. I do have a tortilla. There's 2 tortillas in here. I need one for my lunch tomorrow, if we stay that long. So I can use one now. Kent's still over there setting up, trying to figure out his tarp now that the rain is backed off. Oh yeah, gotta be careful, these things are delicate. There we go. I'm gonna save this one for tomorrow. Can't really spread it, so I'm just gonna smush it. Want some? Gotta love MRE leftovers. PB&J in the Cuberant Basin. There's that lucky old sun that rolls around heaven all day. Just like that, guys. The sun is back out. Tarp held up well. Kent's finally able to start setting up his tent. So Kent is finally set up after our downpour and various other interruptions. This is Kent's brand new tent. This is your first time using it, right? Where are you?
First time. First time using it.
There's Kent. It's pretty roomy under here.
Yep, if this rock wasn't here, we'd have slid it back a little bit. But
Yeah. We should move that rock. Looks good. Looks like home for the night. And Kent's providing dinner tonight. It looks like some dirt clods and some rocks. Is that right?
Yep.
Bet those are a pain to carry in.
very lightweight though.
Yeah. Actually, they're elk steaks, correct?
Correct.
And you freeze dried them yourself.
Yep.
That's crazy. I've never seen elk freeze dried like that. It looks like cardboard. So how do you prepare it?
I'm just gonna pour water over it and let it soak for a couple hours till we're ready to eat.
Are these pre-cooked or were they?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
These are raw.
So they're raw. Cool. I think the plan now, while the elk steaks marinate in water, is to go fishing. Both of us brought our fishing gear, and I've had success at the farther end of the lake, so that's probably where we'll go. Ooh, he's a fighter. He was a fighter. He was just sitting there on my hook. Here it comes. Here it comes. Oh yeah. That's a good brook. Look at that. He's big. He's keep worthy. Wow. He swallowed it way down. I could probably cut the line, I just can't get the hook out. Oh, my first fish. Cuberant Lake number 2. Good sized brook trout. My line took another dive. I just barely got it back in the water. Fish might be over here. It's still going down. I don't know if you can see it. There's too much reflection. I may have one. Let's see, shall we? Oh yeah, my pole just moved. Yeah, there he is. There he is. Come on, you little bugger. Yeah, I'll show you. Look at that. Look at that. He's as big as the other one. Come here. All right. Crazy. Well, that's 2 within, I don't know, a few minutes of each other. Pretty good sized ones. So they like the power bait. And I think I'll stop at those 2. Because honestly, we're in the middle of nowhere. The only thing left to do is let them go.
Well, we caught the 2 fish and then we let them go. There are elk steaks waiting for us back at camp. Mashed potatoes and whatever else we brought. And didn't see the point in keeping the fish too, so we let them go. They were still very feisty and vibrant. They swam off and they're back to being part of this beautiful lake. So back to camp. Let's go see if the steaks are hydrated.
They're looking good.
Oh wow,
That
look
top
at that.
one. I get the one that's on top down in the water. A little more water in them. You got 3 that are.
That's crazy. They went from styrofoam to that.
Yep.
Pretty awesome.
Put a little more water in them.
These are peppers that Kent grew in his own garden. Apparently they have some kick. So Kent didn't just bring steaks and mashed potatoes. He brought the entire kitchen.
Granola and strawberries.
Yeah.
Scrambled eggs, mac and cheese, spaghetti, ramen,
You think you'll be all right for one night?
hot chocolate.
Nice.
Thing is, this is my hunting. This goes in my hunting pack.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, what do I want to take? So when we go hunting, there's 5 of us, and
Yeah.
normally when I start eating, everybody else whines and cries, so I have to
Right.
make enough for everybody.
So you're used to doing it this way.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
And I got
Snacks
snacks, compliments of
of the ER.
the ER. This,
I have the same snacks in my bag. That's
Yep.
funny. Cool.
when we get back to the truck, we'll open the center console.
What's in the center console?
A Ziploc bag about that big with everything that's in here, plus Pop-Tarts, plus...
Really? Wow, you are set up. God, that's just like insane.
So that's dinner.
And all of it's freeze dried, so it's super lightweight, easy to
Lightweight.
carry.
These 3 things of tuna fish weigh more than all those put together.
Wow. And by the way, Kent makes his own freeze dried food. This is all done in his own freeze dryer.
Yeah. You have that. Which weighs the most?
You're right. This is totally heavier than this. You can tell right away. Oh yeah, these are dry.
Smarter than a hand dipstick. The peppers in on top of them.
After that rainstorm we had, our fire's really struggling. Having a hard time keeping it going. All the wood is soaking wet.
Salt and peppers.
Bon appetit, courtesy of Kent. Kent had extra ingredients in his dinner.
Yep.
He accidentally dumped his steak on the ground, so he just brushed it off. That's what you do up here. Elk steak. Wow, you can taste the peppers in the meat.
Can you?
Mm-hmm. Remember, meat goes on your lap, not on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, it's about 8:30, but it's gotten really dark out here. Kent and I ate. The fire wouldn't get going. The wood's all soggy. I mean, you saw the downpour when we came in here. We're exhausted. You know, it was, I worked last night, and then I came home and slept for maybe half an hour, and then Kent picked me up, and we drove up here. That's a, you know, good 2-hour drive to get up here, so it's just been a long day fishing, cooking, setting up, the rainstorm. We're beat this day. And the hike itself was, I don't know, it just seemed like it was more brutal this time than previous years when I've come up here. But the reason I keep coming back to the Cuberant Basin is to remind people that a 12-year-old little boy, young man, disappeared up here and was never found, and he's still up here. Feel free to click the links below if you want more details about that. But for now, I mean, we hiked down to the creek, we washed our dishes, we hung our bear bag, and Kent got down to the creek and realized he brought the wrong bag. He thought he brought his water filter down to the creek with him, and he took his hygiene kit. So he had to go back up here and get his water filter, and now he's back down there filtering water. So we've just had it. It feels like midnight. I guess this is what they call hiker midnight, 8 p.m. Usually in the winter, but it is, you know, another month it'll be autumn officially. So there's more I wanted to show and talk about, but the day just got away from us. We've had a big full day, and we're gonna call it a night. I've had it too. I'm sick of walking on rocks. This whole basin, everywhere you step is a boulder or a rock, and your ankles and your heels and the arches of your feet, they really take a beating. Your legs, your knees. This is not like other places in the Uintas, and we pretty much have the area to ourselves, other than a family that hiked in late and went up higher. So anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say for now, and we'll see you in the morning. Good night, guys. Well, good morning. Sun is not quite up yet. It's 6:30, and Kent and I woke up about the same time. Both of us had to pee. Slept really well, really warm. Kent said he was warm all night, but not super comfortable. He said he found the one rock under his tent. We all do, right? I was warm and comfortable, but I did get a massive leg cramp from my ankle to my thigh just as I was dozing off last night. I've never had a leg cramp like that. It was, all I could do was lay there and let it happen.
That's what she said. It lasted about 15 minutes, and I realized as I was laying there how little I drank any water yesterday. On the hike in at camp, I brought 3 liters of water, and I drank about 1.5 liters and cooked with the same water, so I didn't even drink 1.5 liters. Anyway, so Kent's up there kind of, he's just organizing camp and straightening up stuff we're not using. We're gonna have breakfast soon, simple breakfast. That's the first sound I've heard all night. It was dead quiet. One thing about the Cuberant Basin is it has its own vibe. It's very eerie. Here's what the lake looks like. Very peaceful. Somewhere up here is Garrett Bardsley. They say he may have taken shelter from the elements because a storm rolled in. That storm, doing my research, did not roll in until evening. And he disappeared at 8 in the morning. Somewhere between right here and the meadow, 150, 200 yards that way, where they were camped. And it was 70 degrees that day. It wasn't bad weather until later in the day. You saw how the elements acted up here when we got up here. You saw how it moved in, moved out. That kind of storm easily could have hit. It's very cold right now. It's probably 40. I can see how the temperature could have dropped even in August. They said to 18 degrees. I don't know if that's true. I'll have to do some more research on that. It's hard to say because there's no weather station up here. It easily could drop to 18 degrees up here. An animal attacking him. Animals would have left something behind, and they just didn't. The sock that was found, a searcher claimed it was his, that he had stopped to change his socks. Mom was convinced that it was Garrett's. Hard to say. That was found about a half mile from here in a boulder field. Why Garrett wouldn't just follow the trail down to the meadow, clearly marked trail, easy to follow, and end up a half mile away, doesn't make sense. And then the other thing is the law enforcement said there was no evidence to support foul play. But they also didn't mention there was no evidence to support an animal attacking him. And yet they were quick to chalk it up to that. There was no evidence to support that he took shelter from elements. There were no elements until later that evening. So, I mean, none of it adds up. I'm putting all the facts out there that don't add up to explain why this case does not make sense to me. There were dogs up here, there were people on horseback, helicopters flying over. Nobody found anything except a sock that a searcher claimed was their sock. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this trip. It's been an enjoyable trip with Kent. Really enjoyed his company. Good food, good friend. Too bad we couldn't have a campfire, but everything's soaking wet. It even drizzled a little bit through the night. Heard it hitting my tarp. Can't talk. And right now, it's probably breakfast time. I don't think we'll stay till lunch. It's quite a hike out of here, and I have to work tonight. This is almost the time of day that Garrett supposedly would have been fishing here with his dad. Don't know which spot, don't know where. Sun's coming out, starting to reflect. Let's go have breakfast.
we got here? Carabiner. This is all the freeze-dried stuff you gave me. I've got cereal, I've got cheesy potatoes and ham. I don't know what all I put in here. I have 3 different things that I could use for breakfast, but there's like that much in each one. So that's cereal, that's yogurt, and that's granola, strawberries. I could mix that all up.
What I'm having.
Sounds good. Easy to make. Oh yeah, Kent gave me a little thing of hot chocolate. I didn't even think to bring anything warm to drink. It's this stuff right here, Perk Energy Mexican hot chocolate. What we're gonna do is combine the granola, the cereal, and the yogurt in my pot, add some water, heat it, and then wash it down with some hot chocolate.
I got a steak here for you.
So what are you having for breakfast?
I'm having strawberries and granola and yogurt.
Kind of
Hot
the same
chocolate.
thing.
Same thing.
Wow, cool. All right, simple breakfast.
Yep.
So while we're making breakfast, why don't you give us some of your background, like your law enforcement background?
I was a deputy sheriff for 25 years. Started at Weber County, was there for 6, and then went up to Box Elder County for 19. I worked patrol, investigations, canine, SWAT, honor guard, pretty much everything except the courts. Assisted in a lot of investigations.
Well, Kent and I have talked quite a bit at work and other places about the Garrett Bardsley case. He's watched my videos from up here, and so I thought he would be the ideal person. That's not the only reason we came up here, but you know, we've been wanting to get out together for a long time. But we just happened to be coming here when he was available, and so he's familiar with the Garrett Bardsley case. He remembers when it happened. The story goes that Garrett and his dad got up early down at the meadow, walked up here to the lake, were fishing. This is the nutshell version. Garrett slipped in the water, got his shoes and socks wet, and told his dad he was going to go back to camp to change his socks. His dad said, "Go ahead." He headed back to camp. The trail is clearly marked between here and the meadow, and he vanished somewhere in there, and nobody ever, they searched for days and days. They searched the next spring. This happened August 20th, 2004, so we're just a week past the 19th anniversary of his disappearance. What do you think? Now that you've been up here, you've seen the terrain, you see how thick it is, you see how rough the territory is. What do you think?
It could be very easily, he could have got lost very easily. And I've seen no remnants of wild animals. Okay, the only scat that we've seen is elk, and this is elk country. Haven't seen any lion, any bear, haven't seen any coyote, haven't heard a coyote.
It was dead quiet all night.
All night.
Not a sound.
One bird come and flew in the tree next to us early this morning, and that was it. And just the, I don't know what it was 20 years ago, but just the foot traffic of the hikers in here to the last 24 hours, all I'd have to do is yell out and somebody would find him.
It was really steady. We've had people coming in and going out. In fact, more this year than I've ever seen. A lot of people just coming and going constantly.
So I don't know what the foot traffic was back then,
Yeah.
but now it wouldn't be hard for him to be found or him to hear somebody and call out.
So if he were found now, if somebody stumbled across him, what would they find?
Bones. If you've ever been hunting and you go up into an area where you've dropped an animal previous years, you always go back and look to see what's still there. You'd find backbone, you'd find the hip bones, the shoulder blades. Yeah, animals might have found him and taken an arm or Might have some clothing still laying around. But there would be remnants of it. Rib cage. Found a kid that had committed suicide in Box Elder County. He'd done it in October. We found him in April. And it was just his skeleton. He was missing the lower part of his right leg. They figured that an animal took that. He still had part of his pants and half his shirt on that hadn't deteriorated with the elements.
So that was through one winter. What about, it's been 19 years, would there still be,
You'd still find bones.
would you?
Yeah.
But maybe the clothing might.
Be gone.
He was wearing all cotton. He was wearing sweats and a hoodie.
Yeah, it'd deteriorate pretty quick.
So there's a chance he could have still gotten lost. But you've hiked with me now from the meadow to up here. It literally took 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And it's a marked trail. It's not, I mean, it's a little rocky, but everything up here is.
Yeah. But in the one thing that I read, his dad heard him yell.
Right. They thoroughly searched all through here. It's very thick brush. It's thicker than the rest of the Uintas. Coming up here is a different experience than where I usually camp. And there's a weird vibe here. People have mentioned Bigfoot. They've mentioned, you know, aliens, portals to other dimensions. You know, if you watch any of those Missing 411 shows about people disappearing in the wilderness, there's all kinds of theories and scenarios. There have been kids, little kids, who have disappeared, and they found them 3 miles away completely healthy. So strange things do happen up here, for sure. Now, to notify the authorities, how long did it take us to hike in here?
3 hours.
Yeah, and this is 2004. There was no spot messenger or anything like that, where you could just push a button and send a satellite signal and get help. Somebody had to hike out. It took a while, a long time.
And with all the media on that, somebody hiking in or somebody hiking out would have seen somebody going out with a 12-year-old kid.
His picture was everywhere. This made worldwide news. This was reported in Europe. You know, it was everywhere on their news stations. And somebody would have went, hey, I saw that kid walking on a trail with this weird guy, or with this guy, whatever. But nobody did. Nobody saw him. Anyway, just something more to think about. Want some? This actually is really good, all mixed together.
You got it all the syrup.
Well, guys, we have finished breakfast. We got some cleaning up to do, which is what we're starting to do right now. We're going to pack up and head out of here, I think. Is that the plan?
Yep.
Yeah. I have work tonight. We have a couple hours to hike out and a couple hours to drive home, so it's been a fun outing. Right now, let's get camp cleaned up. Well, that's it, guys. That's where my hammock was. Kent's just about to put on his pack. That's where his tent was. This is where our fire wasn't. But we still had a good time, right?
Yep.
I won't film the struggle. The struggle is real. Beautiful Cuberant Basin. Time to hike out.
Well guys, the rest is all downhill from here on out. We made it.
Yep.
Shouldn't be too bad going out, so do yourselves a favor guys. Get off the couch, get outside in nature and have an adventure. The views are spectacular. And if you can't get outside, can't get off the couch for whatever reason, come along with us. We could use the company. See you in the next one.